Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the English Talk community. I am so happy that you are here with me today. Whether this is your very first episode or you have been listening for a while, I want to thank you for choosing to spend your time with us. Here at the English Talk community, we believe that learning English should feel natural, comfortable, and connected to real life. This is a place where you can feel supported and motivated as you continue on your English learning journey. Today, we are focusing on a very exciting topic, something that I know many of you are working hard to improve. We are going to talk about how you can practice your English at an intermediate level so that you can speak with more confidence just like a native speaker. I know from so many messages and comments that speaking confidently is one of the biggest goals for many of you. You want to feel comfortable having conversations, joining meetings, traveling, making new friends, and sharing your ideas clearly without feeling stressed or worried about making mistakes. And that is exactly what we are going to work on together in today's episode. I want you to imagine something for a moment. Imagine yourself sitting in a coffee shop, talking easily with someone you just met. You are not stopping every few seconds to think about grammar rules or vocabulary. Instead, you are speaking naturally, your words flowing in a way that feels easy and authentic. You understand the person you are talking to, and they understand you. You feel relaxed, confident, and connected. This is not just a dream. With the right practice, this can absolutely be your reality. One thing I want you to remember throughout this episode is that speaking confidently does not mean speaking perfectly. I will say that again because it is so important. Speaking confidently does not mean speaking perfectly. Even native speakers make small mistakes. They pause, they change their words, they sometimes forget what they were going to say. Confidence comes from knowing that communication is about connection, not perfection. If you can share your thoughts and the other person understands you, you are succeeding. In today's practice, we are going to focus on simple but powerful ways to build that kind of confidence. I will share real stories from English learners around the world, and I will give you clear, easy-to-apply tips that you can start using today. Everything we discuss is designed to help you sound more natural, to express yourself more easily, and to enjoy speaking English without the fear that often holds people back. Before we dive deeper, I want to ask you a quick question. Think about the last time you tried to have a conversation in English. Maybe it was at work. Maybe while traveling, or maybe even online in a language exchange. How did you feel? Were you relaxed and comfortable? Or did you feel nervous and worried about saying something wrong? If you felt nervous, you are not alone. It is completely normal. And if you felt relaxed, that is wonderful, and there is always more room to grow. Wherever you are today, this episode is for you. It is for every learner who wants to speak more naturally, to feel good about their English, and to take the next step toward real fluency. Now let's talk a little about what it really means to speak like a native. Sometimes learners hear this phrase and think it means having a perfect American or British accent, using complex vocabulary, or speaking very fast. But in reality, speaking like a native is much simpler than that. It is about being clear, natural, and expressive. It is about understanding common patterns of conversation, using simple phrases that fit real-life situations, and responding in a way that feels easy and natural, not forced or robotic. Many English learners spend a lot of time studying grammar books or memorizing long word lists. While grammar and vocabulary are important, they are only tools. The real goal is to use those tools to communicate. If you focus too much on rules while you are speaking, you might freeze, hesitate, or second-guess yourself. But if you shift your focus to sharing your ideas clearly and naturally, you will find that your confidence grows much faster. Throughout this episode, I will remind you that using simple English is not a weakness. In fact, it is one of the strongest ways to connect with people. Native speakers use simple sentences all the time. They say things like, "I am not sure," or "that sounds good," or "let me check," instead of long, complicated sentences. They keep their communication easy to follow, friendly, and natural, and you can do exactly the same. So, as we move forward, I encourage you to think about yourself as a communicator, not just a language learner. You already know more than you think you do. You already have the ability to share your ideas, tell your stories, and connect with others in English. What we are doing today is building on that foundation, step by step, making it stronger and more natural. Finally, I want to remind you that progress is personal. Everyone's journey is different. Some people learn faster, some slower. Some feel confident after a few months, others take a few years. It does not matter how long it takes. What matters is that you are moving forward. Every conversation you try, every new phrase you practice, every time you listen and learn, You are building your skills. Celebrate those steps. Celebrate every effort you make to practice and improve. All right, are you ready to get started? Let's explore together how you can practice your English at an intermediate level, speak with more confidence, and sound more natural every day. Remember, you are not alone on this journey. You are part of a global community of learners who are working toward the same goal. Together, we can make English feel not just like something you study, but like something you live. Let's get into it. Before we move any further, I want to take a moment to ask you a question. I want you to really think about this, honestly and personally. Have you ever felt that you understand English quite well when you are listening or reading, but when it comes time to speak, something happens? Maybe you freeze, maybe you forget the words you know, or maybe you start doubting yourself and your mind goes blank. Does that sound familiar to you? This is something so many English learners experience, and if you have felt this way, you are definitely not alone. It happens to learners at all levels, from beginners to advanced speakers. Even people who have studied English for years sometimes feel stuck when they try to speak in real conversations. And it can be incredibly frustrating. You might be thinking to yourself, I know this vocabulary. I understand everything when I watch movies or listen to podcasts. Why can I not speak when it is my turn? Take a moment and think about the last time you were in a situation where you needed to speak English. Maybe you were traveling and needed to ask for directions. Maybe you were in a meeting and wanted to share an idea. Maybe you met someone new and wanted to have a friendly conversation. In that moment, what did you feel? Were you confident and relaxed? Or did you feel your heart race a little? Did you feel pressure to speak perfectly? Did you suddenly doubt yourself even though you knew the right words just a few minutes before? It is so important to recognize that this feeling is normal. Your brain is doing something very natural. Listening and reading are receptive skills, which means you can take your time to understand, and you have less pressure. Speaking, on the other hand, is a productive skill. It demands quick thinking, decision-making, and real-time action. And when you add the pressure of wanting to sound good or not make mistakes, it can become overwhelming. Your mind might know what to say, but your emotions create a barrier. I want you to remember a time when you felt this. Picture yourself in that moment. What exactly happened? Did you start thinking too much about grammar? Were you worried about pronouncing something wrong? Did you feel like everyone was judging your English? Try to be specific in your memory. These small moments hold powerful lessons for your future growth. By understanding what happens inside you when you feel blocked, you can start to find ways to move through it. Sometimes learners tell me that when they are alone, they can speak English easily. They can talk to themselves in the mirror, practice speaking exercises, or even think in English. But the moment they are in front of someone else, everything changes. Suddenly the words disappear. The flow they had before is gone. If that has happened to you, I want you to know that this is a sign of progress, not failure. It means you are reaching the edge of your comfort zone. And when you reach that edge, that is where true growth happens. Think about it like learning to ride a bicycle. At first, you might practice in a safe place away from traffic, where you can make mistakes and nobody will care. But when you go out onto the street, everything feels more intense. You have to balance, pay attention to cars, and make decisions quickly. It feels harder, even though you already know how to ride. Speaking English with other people is the same. It is a skill that improves with exposure, practice, and patience. Now, I would like you to reflect on your personal journey. How many times have you understood everything that was said in a conversation, but struggled to find the right response? How many times have you had the perfect sentence in your head, but when you opened your mouth, it came out differently or not at all? These experiences are not failures. They are part of the learning process. Every speaker of every language has moments like these, even in their native language. Maybe you remember a time when you wanted to share a story or an idea, but you held back because you were afraid of making mistakes. Maybe you stayed silent in a meeting, even though you had a great point to share. Maybe you nodded and smiled during a conversation, pretending to understand or pretending to be comfortable, even though inside you felt frustrated or embarrassed. Think about how that moment made you feel. Were you disappointed in yourself? Were you motivated to keep improving? Did you make a plan to practice more? Your emotional response to these situations is very important. Some learners feel discouraged and start to believe they are not good enough. But I want you to see it differently. If you feel blocked when speaking, it means you care. It means you want to communicate well. It means you are serious about connecting with people in English. And that desire is powerful. It can be the fuel that helps you push forward, try new strategies, and build real confidence. I invite you to take a deep breath and recognize that every speaker you admire has also been through moments of hesitation, doubt, and frustration. Speaking naturally in a second language is a complex skill, just like playing an instrument or mastering a sport. It takes time. It takes practice. It takes a willingness to feel uncomfortable sometimes. And most importantly, it takes the courage to keep going even when you feel unsure. So today, I want you to think about your own experience. When you freeze while speaking, what thoughts run through your mind? Are you worrying about grammar? Are you afraid of being judged? Are you unsure about the vocabulary you want to use? Naming these fears is the first step to overcoming them. When you know exactly what is stopping you, you can find specific solutions. For example, if you realize that you freeze because you are searching for the perfect word, you can practice using simpler words that still express your idea. If you find that you hesitate because you are afraid of your accent, you can remind yourself that accents are natural and beautiful, and that clarity matters more than sounding like a native. If you notice that you worry about grammar while speaking, you can practice focusing more on meaning and less on form. Understanding your personal barriers is key. No one else can do this reflection for you. It is an inside job, and it is a powerful one. When you take the time to be honest with yourself about your experiences, you gain insight. You become more aware. And with awareness comes the ability to change. Speaking English confidently is not about eliminating all mistakes. It is about communicating despite the mistakes. It is about trusting yourself even when you are not sure of every word. It is about building resilience, practicing daily, and celebrating small wins. Every time you try, every time you speak, even when you feel nervous, you are getting stronger. As we continue, keep this reflection in your mind. Think about the moments when you understood everything but struggled to speak. Think about how those moments felt and what they taught you. Hold those lessons close because they are the building blocks of your future fluency. One of the biggest ideas I want to share with you today is the importance of clarity over perfection. When learning to speak English, many learners become trapped in the idea that they must speak perfectly in order to be respected, understood, or accepted. But the truth is that real communication is not about perfection. It is about being clear enough for people to understand you and connect with your message. Think about conversations you have had in your own native language. Do you speak in perfect sentences every time? Probably not. Most people, even native speakers, make small mistakes when they speak. They start sentences and do not finish them. They repeat themselves. They use words incorrectly. They mix up tenses sometimes. And you know what? Nobody cares. People are still able to understand each other because the focus is on the meaning, not the form. When you are speaking English, your number one goal should be clarity. Can the person listening to you understand what you are trying to say? If the answer is yes, then you are communicating successfully. Whether you use a perfect tense or find the perfect vocabulary word is much less important than making your idea clear and keeping the conversation flowing. I want you to imagine a conversation between two people. One is from Lisbon, Portugal, and the other is from Dublin, Ireland. They are speaking English together. Maybe the person from Lisbon says something like, "Yesterday I go to the market and buy some fruits." Technically, the grammar is not correct. It should be "Yesterday I went to the market and bought some fruits." But does the listener understand the meaning? Absolutely. The conversation continues. No confusion, no major problem. That is clarity in action. Now imagine if the speaker had frozen because they were unsure about the past tense. Imagine if they had stayed silent, afraid to make a mistake. The conversation would have stopped. The opportunity to connect would have been lost. This is why clarity matters more than perfection. Speaking, even imperfectly, keeps the connection alive. Silence, caused by fear of mistakes, closes the door to connection. Another thing to keep in mind is that native speakers are used to hearing English spoken in many different ways. In cities like London, Toronto, Sydney, and New York, people hear English with accents from all over the world every day. They hear different sentence structures, different rhythms, and different levels of fluency. And still, communication happens. Still, people connect, do business, make friends, and build relationships. I often hear from learners who say, "I want to sound like a native speaker." While it is a great goal to have clear pronunciation and natural expressions, I always remind them that sounding native is not the most important thing. Being understood is. Making your ideas come across is. Sharing your personality, your thoughts, and your stories in a way that others can understand is the real victory. Native speakers make mistakes too. They forget words. They say things like, what I mean is, and other filler phrases. They correct themselves mid-sentence. They even create new words sometimes without realizing it. Perfection is not the standard in real-life conversations. Communication, adaptability, and connection are. Take, for example, someone from Vienna, Austria, speaking English at an international conference. They might say, "Our company are focusing on improve the customer experience." A native speaker would say, "Our company is focusing on improving the customer experience." But again, everyone understands the main idea. The message is clear. Nobody stops listening. The conversation continues. The connection is made. That is success. The pressure to speak perfectly often comes from school environments where language tests are focused on grammar rules and exact answers. But in real-world communication, flexibility is much more valuable than rigid correctness. If you forget the exact past perfect tense but you can still explain what happened, you are succeeding. If you mix up a preposition but your story is still understood, you are succeeding. Imagine you are visiting Paris and you meet a new friend from Stockholm, Sweden. You are both speaking English together. You tell a story about your trip to the Louvre, but you cannot remember the word for sculpture. So you say, the art that is like a statue. Your friend immediately understands. They smile and say, "Oh yes, sculptures." And the conversation flows naturally. You did not need the perfect word to communicate successfully. You used simple words to express your idea clearly. This ability to find another way to say something is a true superpower in language learning. It is called paraphrasing. Instead of getting stuck searching for the perfect word or perfect grammar, you learn to explain your idea in another way, using the words you do know. This keeps communication moving forward and keeps you confident. When you focus on clarity, you also reduce your anxiety. You stop putting impossible pressure on yourself to sound perfect. You start to trust that your voice, your way of expressing ideas, is good enough. And that confidence makes your English sound more natural, more fluent, and more enjoyable for others to listen to. One thing I often suggest to my students is to practice thinking, "How can I say this in a simple way?" Instead of, "How can I say this perfectly?" Simplicity creates clarity. Simplicity builds confidence. Simplicity makes you a better communicator, not just in English, but in any language. For example, instead of trying to say, "The seminar I attended was exceedingly beneficial to my professional development," you can simply say, "The seminar helped me a lot with my work." Both sentences are correct, but the second one is easier, more natural, and just as clear. Native speakers often choose the simpler way when they talk because it is more direct and easier for listeners to follow. When you change your mindset from perfection to clarity, you also start to enjoy speaking English more. You allow yourself to have fun, to play with the language, to take small risks without fear. This playful attitude is exactly what helps you improve faster. The more you speak, the more you learn. The more you learn, the better you feel. It becomes a positive cycle. I want you to think about your next English conversation. Instead of worrying about whether every word is perfect, focus on whether your idea is reaching the other person. Listen to their response. Smile. Be present. Communication is a two-way street. It is not a performance where you are judged. It is a connection where two people meet and share. Every time you speak English and your listener understands you, even if you make small mistakes, you are winning. You are practicing the real skill that matters, human connection, and that is far more valuable than perfect grammar. Let me share a story with you about a student named Daniel. Daniel is from Barcelona, a beautiful city known for its art, history, and vibrant culture. He had been studying English for many years. He took classes in school, he practiced grammar exercises, he memorized long vocabulary lists, and he even attended a few advanced English workshops. On paper, Daniel looked like someone who should feel very confident speaking English. But every time Daniel found himself in a real conversation, he froze. His mind would race. He would think about all the grammar rules he had learned, all the complicated sentence structures he had studied, and he would get overwhelmed. Instead of focusing on the person in front of him, he was trapped inside his own head, worrying about making a mistake. Daniel told me that sometimes he would rather stay silent than risk saying something wrong. He was afraid of sounding foolish. He worried that native speakers would judge him if he did not speak perfectly. This fear made his conversations short, stressful, and frustrating. He felt like he was failing, even after so many years of hard work. One day, Daniel had an opportunity to travel to Manchester for a professional conference. He was excited because it was related to his career in marketing. But he was also terrified because he knew he would have to speak English the entire time. No teachers, no textbooks, just real people expecting real conversation. On his first day there, Daniel attended a networking event. He stood with a small group of professionals, all chatting casually. At first, he stayed quiet, just nodding and smiling. Then, one of the other attendees, a woman from Prague, turned to him and asked, "So, what do you do?" Daniel panicked. He started to think about the perfect way to answer. Should he use the present perfect tense? Should he say, "I have been working as a marketing specialist for 8 years," or just "I work in marketing"? His mind became a storm of doubts. After a long, awkward pause, he finally muttered something very simple. "I work in marketing. And you know what?" The conversation did not stop. The woman smiled and said, "Oh, that is interesting. What kind of marketing do you do?" Daniel, feeling a little more confident, replied, "I help companies with social media and online ads." Again, short, simple, and clear. The woman understood him perfectly. They continued talking for another 15 minutes, and Daniel even met 2 other people who were interested in his work. That night, sitting in his hotel room, Daniel reflected on the experience. He realized something important. Nobody had judged him for speaking simply. In fact, speaking simply had made it easier for people to understand him and to connect with him. The complicated structures he had been so focused on were not necessary for real, everyday communication. From that moment on, Daniel made a decision. He would stop trying to sound perfect. He would focus on being clear, friendly, and present. He would use simple sentences, basic vocabulary, and short explanations. He would trust that his ideas were more important than his grammar. Over the next few days, Daniel enjoyed many conversations at the conference. He talked about his job, his city, his hobbies, and even gave a short presentation about a marketing project he had worked on. His sentences were not always perfect. Sometimes he searched for words. Sometimes he used the wrong preposition. But none of that mattered. People listened. People responded. People connected with him. One morning, during a coffee break, Daniel was speaking with a man from Oslo, Norway. They were talking about traveling, and Daniel said, "I like visit new countries because I learn about new cultures." Not perfect grammar. A native speaker would say, "I like to visit new countries." But it did not matter. His meaning was clear. His passion for travel came through. The conversation continued naturally. What Daniel discovered is something I want you to remember too. Simple sentences are powerful. They carry your ideas clearly and naturally. They allow you to focus on connection, not perfection. They keep your conversations flowing instead of getting stuck. After the conference, Daniel continued practicing this new approach. He started attending English conversation meetups in Barcelona. He found a language partner from Belfast and practiced online once a week. His confidence grew stronger every month. And the best part was that he started to actually enjoy speaking English. Daniel shared with me that now, when he speaks, he feels like himself. He is not trying to impress anyone with fancy words or complex sentences. He is just communicating his ideas, his experiences, and his personality in a real human way. And that is what language is truly about. The next time you find yourself worrying about making mistakes, I want you to think about Daniel. Think about how he overcame his fear by choosing clarity and simplicity. Think about how much more confident and natural he became when he focused on communication instead of perfection. You do not need to wait until your English is perfect to start speaking. You do not need a perfect vocabulary or a perfect accent. You have everything you need right now to make real connections with your English. All you need is the courage to use simple, clear sentences and to trust that your message matters. Remember, the goal is not to impress people with your grammar. The goal is to connect with them, to share your thoughts, and to listen to theirs. And just like Daniel discovered, when you let go of the pressure to be perfect, you open the door to real communication, real friendships, and real opportunities. One of the most powerful techniques you can use to speak English more confidently is to focus on using short and clear sentences. I know it might sound simple, but it is truly one of the most effective ways to make sure you are understood and to keep your conversations flowing naturally. Many learners believe that to sound more advanced, they need to use long, complicated sentences with lots of connectors and fancy vocabulary. But in real life, especially in daily conversations, native speakers often use short sentences. They are quick, easy to follow, and help keep the interaction relaxed and friendly. When you use short sentences, you give yourself more control over what you are saying. You reduce the chance of getting confused halfway through your thought. You avoid building sentences that are so long that you lose track of your grammar or your meaning. And most importantly, you make it easier for the person listening to follow you. Let us think about a simple situation. Imagine you are at the supermarket. You want to ask an employee where to find the bread. You could try to build a long and complicated question like this. "Excuse me, I was wondering if you could possibly tell me where the section for baked goods, such as bread, might be located within the store." It is not wrong, but it is long, and if you get nervous halfway through, you might lose your confidence. Instead, you could say something very simple and clear like this. "Excuse me, where is the bread?" Or even, "Excuse me, where can I find the bread?" Short, clear, polite, and easy to say. The person will understand you immediately and answer without confusion. Short sentences are also easier for you to say correctly because there is less grammar to worry about. You can focus on your pronunciation, on your tone, and on staying relaxed. You can also adapt more easily if the conversation changes. If the person answers you and asks another question, you are ready to continue because you are not stuck inside a long, complicated structure. Let me give you another example. Imagine you are in a city you do not know very well, like Dublin, and you need to find the nearest bus stop. You could make it complicated and say something like, "Hello, I was trying to find the closest place where I can catch a bus because I am not very familiar with the area, and I would appreciate some assistance if you have a moment." Again, it is very polite but too heavy, especially if you are feeling nervous. Instead, you could simply say, "Hi, where's the nearest bus stop?" Or, "Hi, can you tell me how to get to the bus stop?" These short versions are just as polite and much easier to manage in real time. Short sentences are also extremely useful when you are ordering food. Imagine you are in a small restaurant in Lisbon and you want to order lunch. Instead of saying, "I was thinking about ordering something that has chicken in it because I really like chicken dishes, and I was wondering if you could recommend something from your menu," you can just say, "I would like a chicken dish, please." Or, "What chicken dishes do you have?" Again, short, clear, and effective. Another great place to practice short sentences is when you meet new people. Introducing yourself does not have to be complicated. You do not need to say, "Allow me to introduce myself properly. My name is Alex, and I currently reside in Paris where I work as an engineer for an international company that specializes in renewable energy solutions." That is too much for a first meeting. A simple introduction works much better. "Hi, I am Alex. I live in Paris. I work as an engineer." 3 short sentences, each one clear, each one giving your listener one piece of information they can easily respond to. Using short sentences is not about speaking like a robot. It is about building your confidence, creating a rhythm, and making your message easy to understand. Over time, as you get more comfortable, you will naturally start to combine your ideas into longer, more complex sentences when needed. But even then, the core principle remains the same. Clear ideas first, complexity later. When you practice using short sentences, you also give yourself time to breathe and think. You can pause naturally between sentences. This is exactly what native speakers do. Think about a conversation you might hear between 2 friends in Edinburgh. It is full of short exchanges. "Are you coming tonight?" "I do not know." "Maybe." "What time does it start?" "Around 8. "Perfect. See you there." No complicated grammar, no heavy structures, just quick, natural communication. Short sentences are especially helpful when you are dealing with situations where you might feel a little stressed or pressured. For example, if you are at an airport in Amsterdam and you need to check in quickly, you can say, "I have a flight to London. Where is the check-in?" Or if you are at a pharmacy in Munich and you need something for a headache, you can say, "I need medicine for headache. What do you recommend?" Fast, simple, and effective. Another tip is to think of your sentences as small building blocks. Each short sentence gives your conversation a strong foundation. When you have a clear foundation, you can build your ideas on top without worrying that everything will collapse. You can add extra information slowly, one idea at a time. For example, you can start with, I live in Rome. Then add, I have lived here for 5 years. Then add, I work in graphic design. And maybe later add, I love living here because the food and the culture are amazing. You are still speaking naturally, but you are doing it in small, manageable steps. You can practice this technique by setting a small challenge for yourself every day. Try to describe something around you using only short, clear sentences. For example, if you are sitting in a cafe, you can think, I am drinking coffee. The cafe is busy. People are talking. It is sunny outside. This exercise helps train your brain to think clearly in English and builds your fluency over time. Finally, remember that communication is about sharing, not performing. Your goal is to make your message easy for the listener, not to impress them with your vocabulary. Short, clear sentences show respect for your listener's time and attention. They show that you are confident and focused, and they open the door to more natural, more enjoyable conversations in English. Today, I want to share the story of Amélie, who lives in the beautiful city of Lyon, in France. Amélie had been learning English for many years. She studied hard at school, took extra language courses, and even traveled to a few English-speaking countries during her vacations. On paper, she had everything she needed to feel confident. But when it came to real conversations, especially during work meetings, she often froze. Amélie worked for an international company based in Lyon that had regular meetings with partners from London and Dublin. In these meetings, everyone spoke English, and most of her colleagues seemed to manage just fine. They asked questions, gave opinions, and joked around without hesitation. Meanwhile, Amélie often stayed silent. She worried about making mistakes. She worried about her accent. She worried that she would not find the right words quickly enough. The fear of speaking up made her feel invisible sometimes, even though she had good ideas to share. It was frustrating because she knew she understood almost everything that was being said. She could follow the discussions without any problem. But when it was her turn to talk, her mind would suddenly go blank. She would think of the perfect thing to say minutes later, when the moment had already passed. After one especially difficult meeting, where she had wanted to support a colleague's idea but said nothing, Amélie decided she needed to find a solution. She did not want to stay silent anymore. She talked with a friend who was also bilingual and working in an international environment. This friend gave her a very simple piece of advice that changed everything for her. The advice was, you do not need to give long speeches to participate. Sometimes, small confirmations are enough to keep yourself involved and visible. Amélie realized that instead of feeling pressured to say something big or perfect every time, she could use small, natural phrases to show she was engaged. She started practicing expressions like, yes, that is right, or I agree, or exactly during meetings. At first, it felt almost too simple. Could just saying yes, that is right really make a difference? But she decided to give it a try. The next time there was a meeting, Amélie made a plan. She would listen carefully, and whenever someone said something she agreed with, she would simply confirm it out loud. Nothing complicated, no long sentences, just small acknowledgements. At one point in the meeting, a colleague from Manchester presented an idea that Amélie liked. Instead of staying silent, she leaned slightly forward and said, yes, that is right, in a clear, confident voice. It was a short moment, but the colleague smiled at her, and the discussion continued. A few minutes later, she did it again. Exactly, she said, when someone summarized a point she agreed with. Each time she said something, even something small, she felt a little stronger. The more she used these small confirmations, the easier it became. She noticed that people started to include her more in the conversation. They asked her opinion more often. They made eye contact with her. All because she was showing in small but powerful ways that she was present, listening, and engaged. Using small confirmations like, yes, that is right, or I agree, helped Amélie overcome her fear of speaking. She no longer felt like she had to prepare long, perfect sentences in her head before speaking. Instead, she stayed connected to the conversation naturally, just like native speakers often do. Amélie also realized that in real conversations, especially at work, native speakers do not always speak in perfect, complete sentences either. They interrupt each other. They agree quickly. They react naturally. Participating with small confirmations helped Amélie blend into this natural rhythm without feeling like she had to be perfect. Later, she expanded her small phrases to other useful expressions like, that makes sense, or good point, or I see what you mean. These little phrases became tools she could use anytime she felt nervous. They gave her a way to stay involved even when she did not have a full comment ready. After a few months, her colleagues began to see her differently. She was no longer the quiet person who said nothing. She was an active participant in discussions. She did not always speak for long, but when she did, she was clear, supportive, and confident. And most importantly, Amélie herself felt proud of the progress she had made. She also noticed another unexpected benefit. By staying active with small confirmations, she stayed more focused during the meetings. Instead of drifting off or getting distracted, she paid closer attention to what people were saying because she was ready to react. This made her more informed and better prepared when it was time for her to give longer comments. Amélie's story is a great example of how small changes can make a big difference. You do not have to wait until you are perfect to participate. You do not have to stay silent just because you are afraid of making a mistake. Using small confirmations keeps you engaged, shows your interest, and builds your confidence step by step. Every conversation is an opportunity to practice. Every meeting is a chance to say at least one thing, even if it is as simple as yes, that is right. Over time, these small moments add up. They create new habits. They make you feel stronger. And they show others that you are part of the conversation. If you sometimes feel like Amélie did, silent even though you understand everything, remember that you have options. You can start small. You can build your confidence with simple, natural expressions. You can stay connected to the conversation without the pressure of perfection. When you are having a conversation in English, especially at the intermediate level, it is important to remember that communication is not just about speaking long, complex sentences. One of the simplest and most powerful ways to sound more natural is by using short confirmations during a conversation. Today, I want to show you how learning just a few simple phrases can completely change the way you connect with others in English. Let's talk about some very practical expressions that you can use immediately. For example, when someone is explaining something to you and you want to show that you understand, you can say, "That makes sense." It is a very natural and friendly way to let the other person know you are following what they are saying. Instead of staying silent or feeling pressured to give a big response, you can simply say, "That makes sense." It keeps the conversation flowing and it shows that you are engaged. Another great phrase you can use is "I see." It is short, natural, and very common among native speakers. When someone tells you a story, shares information, or explains a problem, you can respond with "I see" to show that you are listening and that you understand. It is a small thing, but it makes a huge difference in how connected you feel to the conversation. Let's imagine a simple situation. You are in a coffee shop in Dublin, and the barista tells you that they are out of the muffin you wanted, but they recommend another one. Instead of standing there silently or feeling nervous about what to say, you can simply smile and say "I see" and then ask about the new option. It is easy, it feels natural, and it shows confidence. When you use small confirmations like these, you create a rhythm in the conversation. It makes the interaction more dynamic because you are giving small signals that you are involved. This is exactly what native speakers do without even thinking about it. They do not just stay quiet while the other person talks. They give little confirmations all the time. You can practice these expressions in different situations. If you are watching a movie or a TV show in English, pay attention to how often characters say things like, "That makes sense, I see," "exactly," or "right." You will notice that these phrases come up a lot. They are not forced or complicated. They are natural parts of real conversations. Another way to practice is to imagine yourself in conversations during your day. Maybe you are at work and a colleague explains a new project. Instead of just nodding, you can say, "That makes sense." Maybe you are talking to a friend and they tell you about their weekend plans. You can respond with "I see" or "sounds good." These small phrases show that you are actively participating, even when you are not the one leading the conversation. Sometimes students worry that repeating these phrases will sound strange or too simple. But in reality, using confirmations makes you sound more natural, not less. Think about your conversations in your native language. How often do you say small words like "yes," "right," or "I see"? It happens all the time. These are the building blocks of real communication. If you want to add even more variety, you can learn a few additional confirmations. For example, you can say "absolutely" when you strongly agree with someone. You can say "definitely" if you want to express strong support. You can say "I get it" when you want to show understanding. These are all short, natural phrases that can fit into almost any conversation. When you start using these expressions, you will probably notice that conversations feel easier. You will not feel like you have to prepare big, perfect sentences every time you want to speak. Instead, you will have simple tools to stay active in the conversation. It takes a lot of pressure off your shoulders. Another benefit is that people will feel more connected to you. When you give small confirmations, you show that you are listening carefully and that you care about what the other person is saying. This builds trust and makes conversations more enjoyable for both sides. Let's do a quick example together. Imagine you are in a meeting and your colleague says, "We have decided to move the deadline forward by 1 week." Instead of staying silent and just nodding, you can respond with, "That makes sense." This shows that you understand the decision and that you are part of the discussion. Or if someone says, "We are planning a new event next month," you can simply say, "I see." It is small, but it keeps you active and engaged. You can also combine confirmations with small follow-up comments if you feel ready. For example, you can say, "That makes sense. It will give us more time to prepare," or "I see. That sounds exciting." Adding a little comment is a great next step when you feel more confident. But even if you only use the basic confirmations, you are already doing a fantastic job. One more thing to remember is that your tone of voice is important. When you say "that makes sense" or "I see," try to sound interested and friendly. Even a simple phrase can feel very warm and positive when you say it with the right tone. Smile if it feels natural for you. Show through your voice that you are really engaged. Do not worry if it feels a little strange at first. Like any new skill, using confirmations becomes easier with practice. You can start small by choosing 1 or 2 phrases to focus on. Maybe today you practice saying, "That makes sense." Tomorrow you can add, "I see." Little by little, you will build a habit of using these natural expressions, and they will become a natural part of your English. You might even find that using confirmations helps you feel less nervous in conversations. Sometimes, the hardest part is just starting to speak. Using a simple confirmation gives you an easy way to participate without pressure. It breaks the silence and shows that you are engaged. Over time, you will also notice that you can respond faster and more naturally. Conversations will start to feel more like real exchanges, not like a test you have to pass. You will start to enjoy speaking English more because it will feel more human, more relaxed, and more real. Small confirmations are powerful because they are simple, natural, and effective. They are part of everyday communication for native speakers, and they can be part of your communication too. You do not need complicated vocabulary or perfect grammar to use them. You just need to practice and make them part of your speaking style. Today, I want to share the story of Luca, a listener from Rome who found a very simple but powerful way to improve his fluency in English. Luca had been studying English for many years. He understood grammar, he had a good vocabulary, and he could understand movies and podcasts without too much trouble. But when it came to speaking, he often felt stuck. He told me that he would start a sentence, then pause, trying to find the right words, and sometimes he would lose confidence halfway through what he was trying to say. Luca wanted to sound more fluent and more natural when speaking English. He dreamed of being able to join conversations easily, to express his ideas without so much hesitation, and to feel relaxed when talking with friends or colleagues. But every time he tried, he felt that his sentences were slow, his mind was searching for the right expressions, and he worried that he did not sound natural. At first, Luca thought the solution was to study even more grammar and memorize more complicated vocabulary. He spent hours trying to learn new expressions, reading advanced articles, and listening to very formal English. But he still felt that something was missing. He realized that even though he knew a lot about English, he was not practicing the small, everyday phrases that people actually use when they speak naturally. One day, Luca had an idea. He decided to try something different. Instead of focusing on difficult or advanced material, he made a list of simple, common phrases that he had heard native speakers use in conversations. These were phrases like, "How was your weekend?" "That sounds great. Let me check. I am not sure about that. And could you help me with this?" They were not complicated or formal. They were the kinds of expressions people use every day without thinking too much. Luca started a new habit. Every morning before beginning his day, he would pick 5 or 6 of these common phrases and repeat them out loud. He would say each phrase 5 or 10 times, trying to speak naturally and with good rhythm. Sometimes he would imagine short conversations where he could use those phrases. For example, he would pretend that a friend was asking him about his plans, and he would respond with phrases like, "I am thinking about going to the park," or "sounds like a good idea." At first, it felt a little strange. Standing alone in his kitchen in Rome, talking to himself in English was not something he was used to. But very quickly, he noticed something interesting. The more he repeated these common phrases, the more natural they felt. He no longer had to stop and think so hard about what to say. The phrases started to come automatically, almost like they were part of his first language. After a few weeks of doing this every day, Luca decided to test his progress. He went to an English-speaking event in his city, a casual meetup where people practiced English together. He was a little nervous, but he promised himself he would try to use some of the phrases he had been practicing. And to his surprise, the conversations felt much easier. He could respond more quickly, and he did not freeze when someone asked him a question. His confidence grew with every conversation. Luca realized that speaking English fluently is not about building long, complicated sentences. It is about having a toolbox of natural, everyday expressions that you can use easily. It is about being ready with small, common phrases that keep the conversation moving. When you have those ready in your mind, you do not have to build each sentence from zero. You just grab the right piece and fit it into the conversation. He also noticed that native speakers do not always say things in complicated ways. In fact, most everyday conversations are made up of simple, short exchanges. When people chat at work, meet friends for coffee, or talk to someone at the store, they use basic phrases, not advanced grammar books. Luca kept expanding his list. Every time he heard a useful phrase, he would add it to his morning practice routine. After a few months, he had hundreds of common phrases that felt completely natural to him, and speaking English was no longer something that made him anxious. It became something he could enjoy because he felt prepared, relaxed, and connected to the language. He also told me that repeating the phrases out loud made a big difference. Reading them silently was not enough. Speaking them, using his voice, training his mouth and muscles to form the English sounds, helped make the phrases automatic. It was like learning a dance move or a song. The more you practice with your whole body, the more natural it becomes. Luca's story is such a great reminder for all of us. You do not need to know every word in the dictionary to speak English confidently. You need to feel comfortable with the words and phrases that are used most often. And the best way to do that is to practice them regularly, with your voice out loud until they become part of you. It is a simple technique, but it is powerful. 5 minutes a day, repeating common phrases, can create real change. And it is something you can do anywhere, whether you are getting ready in the morning, walking to work, or even waiting for a bus. It does not require special materials or a teacher. It just requires a little time, a little consistency, and the willingness to sound natural rather than perfect. When Luca looks back now, he laughs at how complicated he made things at the beginning. He thought he needed to master every rule and memorize every word. But what he really needed was to feel comfortable speaking simple, natural English. And by repeating common phrases every day, he built a bridge between what he knew and what he could actually use in conversation. If you ever feel like you understand a lot of English but still hesitate to speak, think about Luca's story. Maybe you already have the knowledge you need. Maybe it is just a matter of making simple phrases part of your daily life. Speaking English is a physical skill as much as a mental one. Your mouth, your voice, your memory all work together. And with small, consistent practice, you can make real, lasting improvements in how natural and confident you sound. One of the most powerful habits you can create in your English practice is speaking full sentences out loud every single day. I know that many people focus only on reading, listening, or writing when they are learning a language. But speaking is a skill that needs its own kind of practice. And one of the best ways to make speaking feel more natural is by practicing complete phrases with your voice, out loud, every day, even if you are completely alone. You might be thinking, does it really make a difference if no one is listening? The answer is absolutely yes. When you speak sentences out loud, you are training your mouth, your breath, your muscles, and your brain to work together. You are building a natural rhythm, a flow that your body can remember even when you feel nervous later in real conversations. When you only study in your head, you might understand a lot, but speaking can still feel strange or difficult. That is because you have not trained the physical part of the language. Speaking is not just knowing the right words. It is the combination of thinking, breathing, moving your mouth, and delivering the sound clearly. It is a physical habit, just like playing an instrument or learning to swim. That is why I encourage you to make it part of your daily routine to practice full phrases aloud. Find a few sentences that are useful for your life, sentences that you would like to say naturally. Then say them several times. not just once or twice. Repeat them until they start to feel like they belong to you. For example, if you often need to introduce yourself at work, practice saying, "Hi, my name is Maria, and I work in project management. I have been with my company for 3 years." Practice it over and over until you can say it without needing to think about each word separately. Your mouth should know the way, just like your hands know how to tie your shoes without thinking. Or if you are planning a trip and might need to ask for help at a hotel, practice phrases like, "Could you please tell me where the nearest restaurant is, or I would like to check in, please." Repeat them many times, slowly at first, then more naturally, just like you would speak to a real person. When you do this, you are building what I like to call your ready-to-go sentences. These are sentences that you can use immediately, without hesitation, because your body has already practiced them so many times. You will not have to build a sentence word by word in the middle of a conversation. You will have complete pieces ready to use. The great thing about this method is that it does not require a lot of time. You do not need to spend hours every day. Even 10 minutes of practicing sentences out loud can make a huge difference. The key is consistency. If you practice every day, even for a short time, your confidence will grow much faster than if you only practice once in a while. Also, do not worry about sounding perfect when you practice. Focus on clarity and flow. It is better to say the sentence clearly and smoothly than to force yourself to sound like a movie star. Remember, even native speakers do not speak perfectly all the time. They sometimes pause, they sometimes correct themselves, and that is completely normal. One technique that many of my students find helpful is to record themselves. You can use your phone or any simple recorder. Say a sentence several times, then listen to the recording. At first, it might feel uncomfortable to hear your own voice. That is normal. But very soon, you will start noticing small things you can improve, like making your words more connected or speaking with a more natural rhythm. When you hear yourself, you also start to realize that you probably sound better than you think. Many learners are too hard on themselves and believe they sound terrible when, in fact, they are doing much better than they realize. Listening to your own recordings can give you a more realistic and positive view of your progress. Another idea is to connect your sentence practice to your daily activities. For example, if you are preparing breakfast, you could say sentences like, "I am making coffee," or "I am getting ready for work." If you are walking outside, you could say sentences like, "The weather is nice today," or "I see a lot of people at the park." By connecting sentences to real-life moments, you make your practice more natural and more meaningful. You can also create mini dialogues with yourself. Pretend you are ordering at a coffee shop. Practice sentences like, "I would like a cappuccino, please," or "Can I also have a muffin?" Imagine that you are answering questions like, "How are you today?" or "What are your plans for the weekend?" By practicing these simple dialogues, you are preparing yourself for real conversations where you can respond naturally and confidently. If you like a bit more structure, you can keep a small notebook or a digital note where you write down your favorite sentences for practice. You can organize them by theme, like travel, work, or daily life. Every day, pick a few sentences from a category and practice them out loud. Over time, you will build a big collection of sentences that you can use in many different situations. I want to remind you that feeling silly when practicing alone is normal at first, but it is actually a good sign. It means you are stepping out of your comfort zone. It means you are doing the real work that will pay off later. Every successful speaker of English has gone through this stage. Practicing alone is like training for a sport. You do the exercises by yourself so that when the big game comes, you are ready. Practicing full sentences every day also helps you with intonation, stress, and rhythm, which are important parts of sounding natural. English has a musical quality, and by repeating sentences, you start to feel the natural ups and downs, the way some words are stressed more than others. This makes your speech easier to understand and more pleasant to listen to. Finally, remember to be patient with yourself. Language learning is a journey, and small steps every day create big changes over time. Speaking full sentences out loud might seem like a small thing, but it is one of the most powerful tools you can use to build real, confident English speaking skills. Even when it feels slow, even when you make mistakes, every sentence you say brings you closer to your goal. Now, I want to give you a moment to think. Let's take a little break from all the tips and stories and reflect on your own English practice. I'm sure you already have some sentences that you use often in your daily life, right? These could be things you say at work, at home, or even when you're out with friends. Maybe they are simple phrases like, "How's your day?" or "Can I help you?" or "I'll see you later." These are the kinds of sentences that we say every day without even thinking about it, but they are so important because they are the foundation of communication. So here's the challenge. I want you to think of 3 sentences that you use often. They could be part of your routine, things that are essential for your conversations. Maybe it's a sentence you use at the store when asking for help, or something you say to a colleague during a meeting. Maybe it's even something you say to yourself like, I can do this, or I need a break. Once you've identified these sentences, I want you to practice them every single day this week. This is a great way to make your practice practical and focused. Every time you say these phrases, focus on clarity and making them sound natural. You don't need to speak them perfectly, but you should aim for fluency and confidence. By doing this, you'll feel more comfortable using these phrases in real conversations, and the more you practice, the easier it will be to use them without thinking. Let's say one of your sentences is, "Can you help me with that?" This is a very useful sentence that you might say in many situations, whether you're asking for help at work, at a store, or with a friend. Now, when you practice it, say it out loud every day. Focus on the rhythm and the tone, and repeat it until it feels natural, until you can say it without pausing or searching for the words. Or maybe you have a sentence like, "I'm not sure," that you use when you need to express uncertainty. Practice that one. Think about how it might sound in different situations. Maybe you're in a meeting at work and someone asks you a question you're not sure about. Or maybe you're talking to a friend about a plan and you're not entirely certain about the details. Repeating this phrase will help you feel more at ease when you need to use it in real situations. Another example could be something like, "What time does the meeting start?" If you work in a company where you have meetings often, or you regularly attend events or conferences, this is something you would probably say quite a bit. The more you practice it, the more natural it will sound. Try saying it with different intonations and speeds, so you get comfortable with how it can sound in different contexts. The key is to make these phrases your own. Don't just repeat them mechanically. Feel them. Think about the context in which you would use them, and try to say them as if you were speaking to a real person. This will give your practice more life and make the sentences stick in your memory. I'm sure you've heard me say this before, but it's important to remember that language learning is a process. It's not about rushing to speak perfectly right away. It's about consistent daily practice. By working on these 3 sentences every day, you're laying a strong foundation. This simple exercise will help you become more fluent and confident in your speaking skills over time. And don't worry if you make mistakes when practicing. The goal here is not perfection, but progress. Everyone makes mistakes, even native speakers. What's important is that you're learning and improving. Each time you practice these sentences, you're building muscle memory and confidence. You'll feel more prepared when you need to say them in a real situation. So I want you to think about it now. What are 3 sentences you use often? Take a moment and think. Write them down if you can, or just keep them in your mind. These are the sentences that will guide your practice this week. Every day, say them out loud, in the mirror, to yourself, or even to someone else if you can. It's all about getting comfortable with those words and phrases so that when it's time to speak in real conversations, they come out easily and naturally. I encourage you to keep track of your progress, even if it's just a small improvement every day. Maybe after a few days of practice, you'll notice that you're saying these sentences with more confidence. Maybe you'll find that they are coming to you faster in real conversations. That's progress, and it matters. I also encourage you to share these sentences with someone who speaks English. Maybe you have a friend, a colleague, or a language partner who can help you. Practicing with others is another way to reinforce what you've learned. But even if you don't have someone to practice with right now, you can still make a huge impact by practicing alone. This is all about taking small steps every day to become more confident and fluent in English. These simple sentences, when practiced consistently, will help you feel more comfortable in everyday conversations. The key is to make it a habit, and to make that habit a part of your daily routine. I know that with time and dedication, these small efforts will help you make huge strides in your English journey. So I want you to take this challenge seriously and commit to practicing these 3 sentences every day this week. You'll be amazed at how much progress you can make with just a little bit of focused effort each day. Let me share with you a story about Sofia, who lives in Dublin. Sofia is a lawyer, and she had been learning English for many years. She was really good at reading and understanding English, and her grammar was solid. But when it came to speaking, she often felt like she couldn't find the right words fast enough. This made her feel uncomfortable, and she started to avoid speaking in meetings or social situations because of this. She would often make long pauses when she was trying to think of the right words. The silence would stretch out, and sometimes she felt like she was losing her train of thought completely. She realized that the pauses were making her sound less confident and less fluent, and it bothered her a lot. One day, while talking with a colleague, Sofia mentioned how hard it was for her to speak confidently in English, especially in situations where she had to think on her feet. Her colleague, who was a native English speaker, smiled and gave her a piece of advice that completely changed her perspective. He said, "Sofia, every speaker, even native speakers, need time to think. But instead of staying silent, you can use simple filler words to give yourself a moment to collect your thoughts without losing the flow of the conversation." This advice might seem simple, but it had a profound impact on Sofia. Her colleague explained that in everyday conversations, native speakers often use filler words like, "well, you know," or "let me think," when they need a second to gather their thoughts. These words help keep the conversation going and make the speaker sound more natural. They don't have to be used in every sentence, but they give you the space to think while keeping the conversation smooth. He assured her that using filler words in this way is not a sign of weakness or hesitation. It's actually a sign of natural, real-world communication. In fact, if you listen closely to native speakers, you'll hear these filler words often. It's a completely normal part of speaking. At first, Sofia was hesitant. She didn't want to sound like she didn't know what she was talking about, and she was worried that using filler words might make her sound less intelligent. But as she listened to more conversations and paid attention to how native speakers talked, she realized that everyone used these little words. It wasn't about avoiding pauses altogether. It was about managing the flow of the conversation in a way that felt natural. Sofia started practicing with filler words in her daily conversations. She didn't force them into every sentence, but whenever she felt a pause coming, she would say something like, "well," or "you know," or "let me think for a second," before continuing. Slowly but surely, she started to feel more comfortable with it. The pauses in her speech became shorter, and her confidence grew. She found that using filler words helped her sound more natural, and more importantly, it gave her the time she needed to think and choose the right words. Over time, she started to speak more fluidly, and she became more comfortable speaking in meetings and even presenting in English. Sofia's experience is something that many English learners can relate to. It's normal to feel nervous when speaking a new language, especially when you're trying to be accurate and use the right words. But what's important to remember is that no one speaks perfectly all the time, native speakers included. We all need time to think, and we all occasionally struggle to find the right words. The key is to keep the conversation going, even if it means using a few filler words. Using filler words is not about pretending to be fluent when you're not. It's about giving yourself the space to think while maintaining the flow of the conversation. It's an important skill for English learners to develop, especially if you want to speak more naturally. The good news is, these words are simple and easy to use. They don't require advanced vocabulary or grammar skills. They're just natural tools that help you sound more like a native speaker. For example, if someone asks you, "What do you think about the new project?" and you don't immediately have an answer, you can use a filler word to give yourself a second to think. Instead of freezing and staying silent, you can say, "Well, I think it's a great idea, but we might need more time to plan the details." In this example, "well" is just a simple filler word, but it allows you to take a moment to gather your thoughts. It helps you sound more relaxed and confident, instead of rushed or unsure. Another situation might be if someone asks you a difficult question at work, and you need to take a second to formulate your answer. You could say, "That's an interesting point. Let me think about it for a moment." This gives you time to pause without making the conversation feel awkward. It's a natural and effective way to keep the flow going. These small words can make a huge difference in how you sound when speaking English. They allow you to take a breath, think, and then respond with confidence. The best part is that you don't need to memorize any new vocabulary or grammar rules to use them. They are just part of everyday speech, and using them will help you sound more fluent, even if you don't have all the answers right away. So, the next time you feel a pause coming on in a conversation, don't worry. Instead of panicking or worrying about the silence, take a deep breath and use a simple filler word. Say "well," or "you know," or "let me think." These small changes can help you feel more confident, and over time, they will help you sound more natural in your English conversations. Sofia's story shows us that we don't need to avoid pauses or try to speak perfectly. Instead, we can use these little words to give ourselves time to think and maintain the flow of the conversation. And by doing this, we can improve our fluency and confidence, one simple word at a time. One of the most useful tips I can share with you today is about using fillers naturally while speaking. This is something that can really help you when you're speaking English, especially when you're still building your confidence. If you've ever found yourself in a conversation and you're trying to think of the right words, but there's a moment of silence, you might start to feel a bit awkward, right? That silence might make you feel like you're not fluent or that you're taking too long to answer, but the reality is, everyone does it, even native speakers. So, let's talk about fillers. Fillers are words or short phrases that we use in conversation to buy ourselves some time to think. They're things like, well, you know, let me think, actually, I mean, and so. These are natural parts of everyday speech, and they help keep the conversation flowing when we need a second to organize our thoughts. Now, here's the thing. When you're speaking in English, using fillers in a natural way can actually help you sound more confident and fluid. They allow you to take a breath, think, and then continue speaking without feeling like you're rushing or stressing. The key here is not to overuse them, but to use them when they feel natural in a conversation. It's a way to give yourself space to gather your thoughts without sounding insecure or unsure. Imagine you're in a meeting and someone asks you a question. You know what the answer is, but you want to take a second to think about how to phrase it clearly. Instead of freezing or staying silent, you can say something like, well, that's an interesting question. By starting with well, you're letting the other person know that you're thinking about your answer, but you haven't forgotten what they asked. You're also showing that you're giving your answer some thought, rather than just rushing to speak. Let's say you're talking to a colleague at work, and they ask for your opinion on a project. If you're not immediately sure of your thoughts or want to think a bit more about it, you can use a filler phrase like, let me think for a second. It's a very simple phrase, but it gives you a moment to pause and organize your thoughts without making the conversation feel awkward or forced. If you just jump into the answer without taking that moment, it might sound rushed, and that can make you feel less confident. So by saying, let me think, you're actually showing that you're thoughtful and in control of your response. In casual conversations, fillers work the same way. Let's say you're talking to a friend and they ask you about your weekend plans. If you're not sure what to say right away, you could respond with something like, actually, I haven't decided yet. Actually here is just a small word, but it's natural, and it gives you a moment to think about what you're going to say next. By using this filler, you avoid leaving a long silence, which can make the conversation feel a bit awkward. Another great way to use fillers is when you're explaining something and you're looking for the right words. For example, if you're telling a story or explaining a process and you need to take a moment to find the right term, you can say, so the next step is, or, well, after that, you need to. These small phrases act like bridges, helping you move from one part of your explanation to the next while keeping the conversation smooth. What I want you to remember is that fillers are not about being unsure of yourself. They're a tool to help you manage your speech and sound more natural. You're not saying, I don't know what to say, but rather, give me a second to collect my thoughts so I can give you a clear answer. This helps you avoid awkward pauses while maintaining a sense of fluency. It helps you sound like a confident speaker, even if you're still organizing your thoughts. And as a bonus, it gives you time to be thoughtful about your response, making your communication even more effective. Now, here's a fun fact. Native speakers of English use fillers all the time. If you pay attention to conversations, whether you're watching a TV show or listening to someone speak, you'll hear it. They might say things like, you know, I mean, well, and so, often without even realizing it. It's just a natural part of communication. And here's something interesting. Using fillers doesn't make you sound less intelligent or less capable. In fact, it makes you sound more like a native speaker because it's something everyone does. So the next time you're speaking and need a moment to think, remember that using these small words and phrases is a normal, natural part of speaking. Let's also talk about the balance of using fillers. The goal is to use them in moderation. If you overuse fillers, it can make you sound like you're not sure of yourself or like you're filling space with unnecessary words. You don't want to rely on them too much, but when used appropriately, they can make you sound more fluent and confident. Think of them as tools to help you organize your thoughts without creating awkward silences or rushing your speech. If you're just starting to practice this, here's an exercise you can do. Try to incorporate fillers into your practice conversations. Start with short interactions where you're simply trying to keep the conversation going. For example, if you're talking about your day and someone asks, "How was work today?" Instead of jumping right into the answer, try using a filler like, "Well, it was actually a bit busy," or "So I had a lot of meetings." This gives you time to think about what you're going to say next and helps you practice using fillers in a natural, comfortable way. You can even practice with a mirror if you're alone. Say a few sentences out loud and then use fillers like, "Well, actually," or "Let me think," as you speak. Notice how they make the conversation feel more relaxed and how they give you space to organize your ideas. The more you practice, the more natural it will feel to incorporate fillers into your speech when you're having real conversations. And remember, there's no need to be hard on yourself if you make mistakes. Learning to use fillers naturally takes time, but the more you practice, the more comfortable you'll become with it. Over time, you'll find that fillers will become an easy and natural part of your speaking style, helping you sound more confident and fluent. Learning a new language is a journey, and I want to remind you that it's okay to take it one step at a time. Speaking English fluently doesn't happen overnight. It's not something that you can just wake up with. It's a process, and that process requires patience, persistence, and a lot of practice. But here's the beautiful part. Every small step you take is progress. Every moment you speak, whether it's a single sentence or a whole conversation, is a victory. I know that sometimes you might feel like you're not progressing fast enough or that your mistakes are holding you back. Maybe you get frustrated because you can't speak as fluently as you'd like. But I want you to take a moment to recognize how far you've come. Think about where you were when you first started learning English. Remember those initial challenges? The first time you tried to have a conversation or the first time you realized just how many words you didn't know? That was a tough moment, wasn't it? But you kept going. You didn't give up. Now think about how much easier it is to understand the language, how much more confident you are when you hear someone speak in English. Even if you're not perfect, even if you still feel like there's a lot to learn, you're making progress every single day. The fact that you're here, listening to this podcast, means you're committed. And that commitment? That's the most important part. We all have our moments of doubt. It's completely normal to feel that way. But the truth is, each conversation, each word you speak in English, is an accomplishment. And even though it might feel like a small thing, those small things add up. They build on each other. You're creating a foundation, brick by brick. And someday, when you look back, you'll realize just how much you've achieved. So I encourage you to celebrate every victory, no matter how small. Did you use a new phrase today that felt natural? Celebrate that. Did you have a conversation without feeling too nervous? That's a huge win. Did you manage to understand something in English that once seemed impossible? That's progress, and it matters. This journey isn't about being perfect. It's not about speaking perfectly every time. It's about connecting with others and feeling more confident in expressing yourself. It's about understanding that it's okay to make mistakes, because mistakes are part of the learning process. You've heard it before, but it's true. Nobody learns anything without making mistakes. Even native speakers make mistakes. It's the courage to keep going, the willingness to try again. That makes the difference. I want you to imagine yourself a few months from now, a year from now. When you look back at this moment, you'll see how much you've grown. You'll see how much more comfortable you are speaking, how many new phrases and expressions you've picked up, how much better you are at understanding others. It won't be about whether you speak perfectly. It will be about how far you've come and how much you've improved. And when you feel discouraged, when you think it's taking too long or that you're not good enough, I want you to remember this. Progress in learning English is not linear. There are ups and downs. Some days will feel like you're on top of the world, speaking effortlessly, and other days might feel like you're not getting anywhere. But the truth is, you're always moving forward, even on the days that feel hard. Every practice session, every conversation, every time you push yourself a little bit more, those are all steps forward. They might not always feel big, but they're all part of the bigger picture. You might be thinking, "But Julia, I still struggle with some words," or "I get nervous when I speak." And that's okay. That's part of the process. Remember, nobody starts speaking perfectly, not even native speakers. The important thing is that you're here, you're learning, and you're pushing yourself to get better. And that's something to be proud of. Think about this for a moment. What if you decided to stop practicing because you weren't where you wanted to be yet? What if you gave up after a few mistakes? You wouldn't be making the progress you are today. The fact that you're still going, that you're still showing up, even when it's hard, that's what makes all the difference. So please be kind to yourself and recognize how much you've already achieved. Take a moment to reflect on everything you've learned. Maybe it's a new word you've mastered, or a sentence you can say fluently now. Maybe you can understand more when you watch TV shows or listen to conversations. Maybe you've even started speaking more without hesitating as much. All of these are signs of progress, and they're all worth celebrating. I want you to know that you're not alone on this journey. Everyone who speaks a second language has gone through the same struggles. It's a global experience. You're part of a community of learners, and each person is walking their own path, but we're all moving in the same direction. And that direction is towards more confidence, more fluency, and more communication. Every time you feel unsure, remind yourself that you're capable of great things. You've already taken so many steps forward, and you have the power to keep going. It's okay to feel unsure sometimes, but never forget how much you've accomplished. You are doing amazing things by simply choosing to learn, to grow, and to continue improving. You have a world of opportunity ahead of you, and each step you take gets you closer to your goal. So, today, take a moment to celebrate yourself. Celebrate your progress. Even if it feels small, it's meaningful. Recognize your victories and carry that energy forward into your next practice session, your next conversation. You've got this. Now, let's make this week a little different, shall we? I want to propose a challenge for all of you. This is something that can help you build more confidence in speaking English, and it's something you can start today. The challenge is simple, but effective. Choose one day this week where you'll spend at least 5 minutes speaking in English, no matter what. And here's the twist. You can either speak with a friend or speak to yourself. Yes, you heard that right. Talk to yourself. I know this might sound a little odd, but it's a fantastic way to practice. We're all so used to speaking in our native languages, and it feels natural, right? But speaking in English, even just for a few minutes, can be an incredible way to train your brain and improve your fluency. The key is to start small, to make it a habit, and to do it consistently. So, when I say 5 minutes, I mean it. Find a moment, whether it's in the morning when you're getting ready, or in the evening when you're reflecting on your day, and speak about what's going on in your life. Talk about what you did, how your day went, what you plan to do tomorrow. It's important that you don't overthink this. The goal is not to sound perfect. It's about putting your thoughts into English, letting the words flow, and getting comfortable with the language. You can talk about anything. It doesn't have to be a big conversation about deep topics. It can be as simple as, today I woke up at 8 a.m., I had coffee, and then I went to work. I talked to my colleague about the project we are working on. Even if you feel a little nervous, it's okay. That's normal. The more you practice, the more natural it will feel. And hey, if you don't have a friend available to chat with in English, don't worry. You can absolutely do this by yourself. Take a few minutes in front of the mirror, or even just in your room, and start talking about your day in English. Describe what happened, what you're feeling, or what you're thinking. The important part is that you're forcing yourself to use English in a real, practical situation, rather than just studying it in books or online. This exercise will help you think in English and make it easier for you to start forming sentences without overthinking. It also helps to make your brain switch gears and think in English faster. I know it can feel strange at first, but trust me, this method works. And once you get comfortable with it, you'll notice yourself using more complex sentences and feeling more confident in your ability to express your thoughts. If you're worried about making mistakes, let me tell you, it's perfectly okay to make them. I've made mistakes in English, and I speak it every day. Everyone does, even native speakers. It's not about being perfect. It's about being brave enough to speak, to make those mistakes, and to learn from them. So I encourage you to embrace it. Don't let fear hold you back. One of the best things you can do for yourself is get comfortable with speaking English, and the only way to do that is by speaking it. The more you practice, the more natural it will feel. So whether you talk to a friend, a colleague, or yourself, do it every week. Pick that day, set aside those 5 minutes, and really engage with the language. Make it a regular habit. Now, some of you might be thinking, but Julia, I'm not sure if I'll have enough things to say for 5 minutes. Well, let me help you with that. If you're stuck, start with these simple prompts. What did you do today? Where did you go? What did you eat? How did you feel today? Were you happy, tired, excited? Why? What are your plans for tomorrow? What's something you're looking forward to? What's something you learned recently? Or maybe something you've been curious about? These are great ways to get your thoughts flowing in English. Start with a sentence or two, and then keep going. You'll be surprised at how much you can say once you start. The goal is to keep the conversation going without overthinking. If you don't know a word, that's okay too. Just use a synonym or describe it in another way. The important thing is to keep speaking, and here's something that might help. If you feel like you're not sure if what you're saying is right, try recording yourself. You can listen to yourself speak and see what sounds good and what doesn't. It's a great way to identify areas for improvement, and it will also help you track your progress. Every time you listen to a recording, you'll notice that you're speaking a little more confidently, a little more fluently. Remember, this challenge is about getting used to the process of speaking. Don't focus on perfection. Focus on making it a regular habit. In fact, if you can do this for 5 minutes a day, just imagine how much progress you'll make in a week. In a month, you'll see even bigger changes. It's a simple, yet powerful challenge that can help you build momentum. So, here's your action step for this week. Choose one day and commit to speaking English for 5 minutes, either with a friend or by yourself. Don't worry about mistakes. Just focus on expressing yourself and having fun with it. The more you practice, the easier it will get. And remember, consistency is key. Keep going, keep speaking, and you'll be amazed at how quickly you improve. You got this. It's easy to listen to these tips, feel inspired for a moment, and then move on to the next thing. But the real transformation happens when you take action. So think for a moment, how can you take these tips and integrate them into your daily routine? What would it look like for you to practice these techniques in real-life situations? Whether you're talking to a friend, a colleague, or even just thinking to yourself in English, it's the simple steps you take every day that will help you improve. Start small, as I've mentioned earlier. It doesn't need to be a huge, overwhelming change. Maybe today you decide to practice speaking for 5 minutes, just like we talked about. Maybe tomorrow you focus on using simple, clear sentences to describe what you did. And the next day, you try using fillers like well or you know to keep the conversation flowing. Each of these little actions will add up. And before you know it, you'll see a big difference in your confidence and fluency. I understand it can be difficult to get started. We all face moments of hesitation, doubt, or frustration when learning something new, and that's totally normal. But don't let those feelings stop you from moving forward. Everyone goes through the same process of learning, even the most fluent speakers. They didn't get to where they are without making mistakes, without practicing consistently, and without sometimes feeling a bit unsure. It's part of the journey. The important thing is to keep going, even when it feels hard. And remember, you are not alone in this. As part of our community, you have support. There are so many others like you, learning and growing in their language skills. Whether you're joining the community through the podcast or connecting with others who are also learning, you have the resources and the motivation to keep moving forward. You're part of a larger group of people who are all working on improving their English, and that sense of connection can be a huge motivator to stay consistent. Take a moment now to think about your goals. What do you want to achieve in the next few weeks? In the next few months? Is it to speak more confidently with friends? Or to make your next meeting at work feel smoother? Maybe you want to feel more comfortable traveling and talking to locals in English. Whatever your goals are, you can make them a reality with consistent practice. And guess what? You don't have to do it alone. That's why our community exists, to support and encourage each other along the way. If you feel like you're struggling or like you're not making progress as quickly as you'd like, don't get discouraged. It's a natural part of the process. It's important to be patient with yourself. You're learning something new, and it takes time to build new habits and patterns in your language skills. But each day you practice, you're getting one step closer to that fluency you desire. So keep it up and trust in the process. Let's take a moment to reflect on what we've learned today. We've discussed the power of using clear and simple phrases. We've talked about how important it is to practice speaking regularly, even if it's just for a few minutes every day. You've seen how people like Daniel from Barcelona, Amélie from Lyon, and Luca from Rome have used these strategies to boost their confidence and fluency in English. You've also learned about the importance of using fillers to keep conversations flowing smoothly, without feeling stuck or unsure. Now think about how you can apply these same techniques in your life. Can you take a few minutes every day to practice speaking English? Maybe you start with a simple sentence, something you say every day in your native language, and try saying it in English. Or maybe you challenge yourself to hold a short conversation in English with a friend or colleague. Small steps, when done consistently, will lead to big changes over time. Remember, it's not about perfection. It's about progress. And every time you speak in English, you're improving, even if you make mistakes. Mistakes are just part of the learning process, and they don't define your ability to communicate. You are capable and you are making progress every single day. So I want to leave you with this thought. As you go through your week, try to incorporate these tips into your everyday routine. Make it a goal to practice speaking English daily. Reflect on how you can keep the conversation going with simple sentences, or how you can use fillers to sound more natural. You don't need to be perfect, but you do need to be consistent. The more you practice, the easier it will become, and the more confident you will feel. And don't forget, you're not in this alone. Continue to practice with the community, continue to support one another, and keep pushing yourself to reach your goals. You've got this, and I can't wait to see how far you'll go. Take action now. Start today. And most importantly, have fun with it. English is a tool to connect, to learn, and to express yourself, and every time you use it, you're opening up more possibilities for yourself. Keep going. I believe in you. Thank you so much for joining me in today's episode. I'm really grateful for your time and for the effort you've put into improving your English. I hope that what we've discussed today, the stories of people like Daniel, Amélie, and Luca, along with the practical tips and techniques, will inspire you to take action and start practicing with more confidence. Remember, every small step you take counts. Whether it's speaking for a few minutes every day or practicing simple phrases, it all adds up. The key to fluency is consistency. The more you practice, the more natural it will feel. And the best part? You're already on the right path simply by being here, listening, and investing in yourself and your English skills. I know that learning a new language can feel overwhelming at times, but keep in mind that every time you push yourself to speak, you're growing. Mistakes are part of the process, and they don't define you. In fact, they help you improve. What matters is that you keep going, stay motivated, and celebrate the small victories along the way. It's not about being perfect, it's about being consistent and continuing to move forward. So don't get discouraged if you don't see immediate results. Progress in language learning is gradual, and it takes time. But trust me, you are absolutely capable of improving your English. I've seen so many people just like you who have started where you are now and have made incredible progress. The fact that you're listening to this podcast means that you're already committed to learning and growing, and that's something to be proud of. Each time you use English, whether it's to have a conversation with a friend, ask for directions, or even think in English during your day, you're building your confidence. And soon enough, you'll notice that you're speaking more fluently, more naturally, and with greater ease. As we wrap up today's episode, I want you to take a moment to reflect on what you've learned. How can you incorporate the tips from today into your routine? Can you practice speaking for a few minutes each day? Or maybe you can focus on using simple, clear sentences when you're talking to someone in English. It's all about taking action, no matter how small, and staying consistent. Remember, you're not alone on this journey. You're part of a community of learners who are all here for the same reason, to improve our English and communicate with confidence. Keep practicing, keep challenging yourself, and most importantly, be patient with yourself. I also want to encourage you to keep exploring and learning. Every episode of this podcast is here to provide you with more insights, tips, and stories that will help you along the way. So, if you found today's episode helpful, I invite you to listen to the next one, where we'll dive even deeper into practical techniques and inspiring stories that will keep you motivated and moving forward. Thank you again for being part of this community. I'm truly excited to see how much you'll grow in your English skills. Don't forget that every little step you take brings you closer to your goals, and every time you practice, you're getting better. Keep going, and I'll see you in the next episode.